Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Want a guide to the future? Embrace change, says our guest, Rudy Poe. Rudy, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Now, Rudy, your book is entitled Embracing Change. So you take the title right there. It tells us everything. But why do you say this book is a personal rant?
Well, so over the years, it's been, as I get older, I actually enjoy the process of change. And I keep finding that most people do not. And we live in this world of crazy change, right? Change is happening faster and faster in more ways than one, more ways than we can count. And yet it baffles my mind how people don't want to embrace that. And I personally feel that the best way forward is to embrace it, both personally and in business and in life in general.
And I guess even if you don't like change and you don't embrace it, we're still going to be stuck with it.
Yeah, well, change happens to us every minute, every day. I mean, with every breath we take, right? We get a little bit older, something changes, the weather changes, the day changes, the time changes. So there is no escaping it. It is omnipresent, if you will.
Now, I know I read in your book, you say change comes from one of two places. What are those two places?
I believe that change either happens to you or it happens because of you. Now, change happens to us all the time just by existing, right?
Exactly.
But the change that really gets us to this place where I call your desired future, which is the future that we all want to go to, that kind of change really is like transformational change. And the only way that happens is if we fully engage in it and if we're proactive, live a proactive life rather than a reactive life.
Now, the title of your book is Embracing Change, and you mentioned throughout the book, change is an opportunity to be embraced, and of course, you said it before, not feared. But I guess, unfortunately, we either fear some change or all change, etc. Why do we have such a great fear?
Well, fear is built into our DNA, as the world has changed incredibly from when our DNA was created, right? We're kind of like 1.0 DNA people living in a 2.0 world. We're natures of habit, and we love our comfort zone, right? That's where we feel comfortable. That's where we feel safe.
That
and
spot.
Safety
My favorite place.
Right? Safety is one of those things that we all crave. But really, you have to break out of that comfort zone if you want to make any progress in the world.
Well, that's our people and that's our audience. The show is Secrets of Success. Anyone listening to the show wants to change some things or do what's necessary in order to get ahead, to make for a better life, or maybe just a happier life doing what they're doing, maybe in a different direction, a different town, a different location, or with different people. But they do want to do this. You mentioned that change is as simple as 1, 2, 3, and that almost sounds too simple, but what does that mean?
Well, so I feel like it's a 3-step process. And the first step process is you imagine your future, right? If you're going to be proactive in this and actually create your future, first you have to imagine something. That's step 1. Step 2 then is you create what you imagine. And step 3 is you transform yourself from what you've created. So you imagine, you create, you transform. 1, 2, 3.
You make it sound so simple, but I think it's probably in the real world. I can think of a few people, if I said that to them, they'd say, yes, what have you been smoking? And go on about their day. Is it really that simple when you run a seminar or teach a class about this? Is it that easy to get people to change?
Well, I think you have to explain something in a really simple way if you're going to get anybody to at least buy in. But it is a process, right? So that's what I believe. And the process, getting through the process might not be that easy. But if you can break it down into something that simple, then people can start to understand it. One of the other things in my book is really, it ends with a part called the Process of Illumination. And really what that is I think creativity is problem solving. And that's how we move forward, is we problem solve. And problem solving, like Imagine, Create, Transform, is a process. And anybody can learn this process if you're open-minded and have the right mindset and are willing to go through that step-by-step process.
Can you take something you've either gone through personally or maybe one of your students or seminar attendees and how they would handle a problem using that imagine, create, transform?
Well, so I personally just went through about a 6-month transition of moving. I grew up in I grew up in California, and I just moved to Florida. And it was a 6-month process. And, it's funny, a lot of people who don't like to change, they say, what are you doing? You're crazy. How can you move? You've lived here all your life. And so that's everybody who wanting to stay in their comfort zone, right? But anyway, so I imagined where would I want to live? And so I did some research, which is part of my process of illumination, part of the problem solving process. I did some research, and then we went and we came here. I'm in Florida now. We came here on a little research trip, and my research, we fine-tuned that. And then we went through the process. We bought a house, we packed our stuff, we moved. And then, so we created what I imagined. And about 6 months later, it was amazing. I actually found that there's joy in change, which is something that I don't think most people would recognize, right? It's like, oh, change is scary, but there's actually joy once you complete and come out the other side. So I unpacked that last box. It was about a 6-month process. And I was relaxing in the backyard, and I thought, wow, this is great. I changed. I have a new home. Everything is in its place. I'm comfortable, and it is as I imagined.
I thought you were going to tell me you were relaxing in the backyard and a nice alligator walked up to you and more or less gave you the look like, welcome to Florida, but this is what you got yourself into, and it caused you to pause. But during that process, wasn't there a few times saying, why did I do this?
There were times that were difficult, driving all the way across the country twice, looking for a house when it wasn't working out. It's like we looked and we put an offer on a place and it didn't work out. And then we went back to the drawing board and so on and so forth. So yes, of course, there's always trials and tribulations, but maybe that's what creates the joy on the other end is you've actually went through all that process and you feel a sense of accomplishment on the other side.
That's a great point. I guess with any change, the harder you work for something, and let's just take a certificate course or even a 4-year or 2-year college course. If you've worked 2 years for that or worked during the day and went to school at night, when you've accomplished it, you do feel great. There's a change. You're now a college graduate or you have a nursing certificate or a certificate to do some type of work that requires state approval or federal approval. So there is a great feeling behind that. So I guess they even out. And honestly, even the best of days, we're going to have some negative thoughts like, oh, why did I go out in the rain or in the snow? Or did I have to get engaged in this problem at work? I could have just walked by and not offered my services and left my coworkers to handle it.
But you probably grew up with this. Right? Anything worth having is worth working for, right? Nothing gets handed to you really, if in most of life anyway.
I'm one of those people, and I think I would identify with a lot of people in the audience that would probably be a non-changer. And yet, as I prepared for the show today, I thought, if everybody was like me, we would still be doing things either the way they did them in 1979 or 1996 or 2007. And not that that's necessarily bad, but when we think of all the medical advances we've had, and all the technological advances, I can watch a 60-inch TV in my room and see football players and look at the ball. Did it go over the first down line or over the goal line? How great that is if you're a sports fan or if you're a patient in the hospital, how thankful you are. Some of the new advances, you can go in and have a problem taken care of in half a day rather than 2 weeks as it might have been 30 or 40 years ago. So I guess if you really think about it, obviously the trade-offs are worth it. It's nice to have that nicer car, the conveniences, an entire encyclopedia in a phone on your pocket that you could look up anything. So I guess we all have to weigh the positives and negatives. I know you talk about the mindset, a positive and negative mindset being important. How does that work into change?
It's everything, if you have a negative outlook on life, everything is going to come back at you through that filter, right? So you can also say, people could say, oh, you always looked at the world like through rose-colored glasses, but if you don't have a positive outlook, you're at a handicap already, so you have to be, I'm a firm believer that you need to look, awareness is the key thing, right? You need to be aware. And you need to be aware of what's going on around you and see the world be aware of the opportunities that exist. and aware of the possibilities that exist. Because if you're not aware, you won't even see any of that, and you won't have any reason to be positive, right? But if you look at the lens, look at the world through that type of a lens, the future is going to be much brighter no matter how you look at it.
Rudy, I want us to have a nice future, so I'm going to let our audience know that if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Rudy Poe, P-O-E. His book is Embracing Change, and we're going to ask Rudy where we can get the book and if there's a website where we can get more information about this.
Yeah, so it's available on Amazon, and it's both Kindle version and paperback. And I'm also just working on the audiobook that should be out in about a month or so. And any more information you want to find about me or the book, it's all on my website, rudypoe.com.
We'll give you that information later in the show again, so if you didn't get it down, and if you're the person who's a bit like me, maybe afraid of the future or afraid of change, Rudy will give you some great ideas how you can overcome that and get you on the right track. Now, I think it's on page 10 in your book, the beginning of chapter 1, you say, "Let's not look back in anger, nor forward in fear, but around in awareness." And I know that's a quote from someone else, but can you explain what that means?
Yeah, well, I just touched on that a little bit. And I think the first step to any kind of change is awareness. You have to be aware of your current state. And, really change is a change of state. You're changing your state of your present into the state of the future, and your state of being here and now to the state of where you want to go. And so awareness is key. Without that, you have to be aware of yourself. You have to be aware of others, your environment, where you want to go. That really, truly is the first step to anything moving forward.
Rudy, you mentioned that change is inevitable, but transformation is not. And most of us don't use those two words together, at least I didn't. Can you explain what you mean and what's so different between change and transformation? What is transformation as opposed to change?
Well, change is just something that is, one is kind of, again, I touched a little bit on this before, but change is a force of nature, right? Change is everywhere. It's the universe is changing. Everything is changing. There's that kind of change that you can't necessarily control. But transformation, I think, comes from within. That is where you head towards this place I call your desired future. If you want to transform yourself into someone better, to doing something better, to having a better life, this or that, that is transformation. And that starts with, back to the 3-step process, it starts with your imagination, and then you create what you imagine, and then you transform yourself from that creation.
With every guest that we have on, I look for what I call a takeaway. And I copied a quote down from your book, and I think that's going to be the takeaway from today's show. And it says, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." And I thought that was great. I thought that's something we should have posted in all our offices, because most of us kind of stay in the same place, whatever we are. We're an English teacher, we're a mechanic, we're a waiter, an accountant. But if we can let go of what we are, we could probably fly quite high and be far more than what we're doing right now. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so I call it being and becoming, right? You don't learn how to paint, you become an artist, right? You don't learn a sport, you become a sportsman. Those are a couple of examples, right? But being, one of the things about happiness is you have to be in the present, live in the present. That's important. But what is it that you're becoming? Where are you going? And like the quote says, you do have to let go of some things. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to step into that world of a little bit of uncertainty, which is, honestly, that's one of the things we all fear most. And I think that's why it's so difficult to do that, because where we are here, that's all certain, right? I can look around, I can see, I can touch, I can feel everything. But to go into some place that's unknown, that's uncertain, that takes a bit of courage. And that's the becoming part.
Who comes to you, or who is your typical client interested in change? Let's put it that way. Is it the older person? Is it the younger person? Is it smack dab in the middle?
I don't think it has anything to do with age. When I first started this project, I thought it would have to do with age, right? I thought it would be more like people 40 to 60, kind of midlife area, because that's where all the big epic changes happen in life. right? I mean, maybe you become an empty nester, or your marital status changes, or your job status changes. Maybe you are forced to change your job. Maybe you want to change your job. You have to take care of your kids are changing, your parents are changing, everything. Those are big, epic changes, right? But what I came to understand is the people who want to change, it doesn't have anything to do with age. It has to do with a mindset. It has to be, I have to be willing to be standing at the edge of knowing that I want to change, but I don't know how, right? So it's kind of like standing at the chasm and I'm ready to jump. If you're back off the cliff and you're safe where you are, that's not going to be somebody who's going to be interested in talking to me or reading my book. But if it's somebody who is ready to make the move, but just needs a little push, that's what I think my book and my writings can offer.
You're the pusher.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. That might be the title for your next book. Now, Rudy, just in general, people who either talk to you about change, do you find they're coming off a certain life event, either a loss of job, death, divorce, happiness, birth, grandchild or child, something like that? Is there something in life where either positive, negative, or life-changing that they come to you?
I think people, I've had some students, I've taught the book as a live class as well. And it's really surprised me that how much people open up to me when I start talking about all this. It's like, and they all come from a different place. So I don't know that there's one place, but there is something internal that's ticking away in there. And when you start talking about this stuff and you actually start just opening your mind to it, I think it opens a floodgate of all kinds of thoughts that you might not have had before or didn't really know you were considering.
I know after each of your chapters, you have some questions, and they're great ones. I usually jump over those, but with yours, I was looking at them, and I thought, boy, if someone starts thinking about this, it really makes them get into themselves. It was almost like having Dr. Phil in the room, things that he would probably ask us. And one of the questions you say, list 3 times change was put upon us. And I'm guessing that would be a major event, either a marriage or divorce, a loss of a loved one, a child moving across country, or taking a position where they would not be in the proximity of the parent, or vice versa. Is that what you're usually finding, or do you get some very unusual ones that you wouldn't even expect?
The book is, I don't know if this is going to answer your question or not, but the book tries to walk you through a process of deciding where you want to go. So if it's something that happens to you, or you're just thinking about something, it's like about looking towards the future, and this place I call your desired future. And I structured the book in a way that helps you identify that. And this goes to your questions, all the questions that I ask you at the end of every chapter, these exercises. So it's structured as a guide where you determine, it's like, think about where you want to go, kind of fantasize about it almost. And then let's walk you through the process of getting there, no matter where you're starting from. But it's more important as to where you want to go than where you're coming from, I think, ultimately.
Well, I think those questions are excellent because they really make us answer them about ourselves, and it gets us thinking about it. And I noticed the shows, as I mentioned kiddingly about Dr. Phil, but that and similar shows, they usually throw it back to the guests themselves, and the guests actually answer their own questions and kind of know. And of course, there might be a sad event. You lose a parent, but you might have been taking care of them for years. This might open you up to opportunities in your life. And I think the follow-up question that you had after that, how would you have acted if you saw this as an opportunity rather than a negative? Of course, it's sad that you've lost someone either by death or illness or perhaps divorce or moving, but there's also going to be an opportunity there. And I think for every negative, am I correct, there's going to be something positive that we could take from it.
Yeah, that goes back to mindset. And this isn't to say anything or diminish anything like you had just mentioned, like a tragic event, like a passing of a loved one or something like that. But, we all, to stay healthy, we have to move on and see. That goes back to the mindset thing, right? I mean, if you can, where is the opportunity in this? I was just working on the audio book today, and I was working on this chapter about rejection. And, you get rejected for something and you feel bad, and it's like, oh, this and that. And, you should evaluate. But one of the things you should do with rejection, for instance, is look at it as an opportunity. now you have some new thing that leads you open to what is next, what could be new. So that's where, again, your imagination comes into play, and think about all the different possibilities that exist beginning now.
I guess losing a job to taking one that we've probably all gone through at some point, whether the company closes or because of the pandemic, just world events have caused differences in companies, whether the way they do business or to close down or their location. But it also gives us opportunities. There might be a better job out there or something we enjoy doing, or it might force our hand to go back and get a certificate or a degree that would lead us to another field where every day might be a joy going to work rather than a burden, etc. Rudy, once again, at this point in the show, I'd like to tell our audience that if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Our guest today is Rudy Poe. His book is Embracing Change, and we're going to ask him now where we can get that book and a website where we can find out more information.
Okay, the book is available on Amazon.com, and if you go to my website, Rudy Poe, you will find out all kinds of things. The book also exists as an online course, and the information about that is there, as well as anything and everything you ever wanted to know about me, myself, and I.
Can't ask for more than that. And to our audience, I think a lot of the questions, and I'll challenge you on this, meaning the audience members, try them after the chapter, take a look at it, and see how you would answer them. I think it will tell you a lot about yourself. And one of the ones, again, I'll mention that you asked 3 times when the reader initiated change. And while we may not like to react to change, if we're the boss, sometimes we have to initiate a change. We're either moving the company or the location of something, changing offices, letting someone go, adding someone on, which might mean a division of the labor in some way or a reduction of a sales territory. So there's a lot of things that we're starting off, whether we want to or not, just as part of our position or our everyday lives. So I think those questions were excellent. Now, you have a term, and I always like to find new terms from each book we deal with, and you ask, what is the day after tomorrow syndrome? What does that mean? That sounds cool. Sounds like a science fiction movie.
Yeah, the day after tomorrow syndrome it has to do with procrastination, right? I mean, everybody says, yeah, I'll get to that. Maybe I'm busy today, but maybe I'll get that tomorrow. Or, if I should get these quotes, if I can, let me look this up real quick, if I may. It's kind of funny. I have a bunch of really great quotes from famous people.
The quotes are terrific. I love them. And in fact, sometimes I feel bad that I'm taking quotes from someone else and using them on your show or someone else's show, but they really were very good in your book.
Well, I love quotes, and I have a lot of them in my book. I mean, I actually collect them on my website. I have a section called Voices, and there's a lot of wisdom in quotes. And, everybody else is smarter than me, so why shouldn't I?
There you go. That's perfect. Why not take them and use them because it stimulates thought? Yeah.
So the day after tomorrow syndrome, to go back to that real quick, is like, this is a great quote, and this pretty much sums it up. It's like, someday is not a day of the week. It's Janet Daly, author, but, it's like, it's about putting it off to someday. And someday never gets anything done, right? I mean, if you want to get something done, you got to get it done. You got to just kind of get up and get it done. Stop procrastinating. Procrastinating is one of the worst things for progress that's ever been part of our DNA, I think,
It sounds like you have a granny cam in my house because I'm the one who, if I don't do it early in the day, I keep putting it off, and then it becomes tomorrow, and that becomes the day of the week for me, just as you mentioned in there. Before the show, you and I talked about the definition of hell, and of course, that's another quote in your book. So I don't know if you want me to read it or if you have it there, if you want to read it.
Yeah,
I thought it was
you can pull
excellent.
it up. I don't have it.
I have it here, and I think it's on page 44. Someone once told me the definition of hell: the last day you have on earth, the person you become will meet the person you could have become. And it's kind of shocking to think, oh my gosh, maybe if I had tried out for the Yankees years ago, I would have made them. Maybe if I had gone to medical school, I would be a doctor today. Now, who knows if I'd be a happy doctor, a good doctor, or maybe a doctor who's guilty of malpractice. But I think it says a lot, so I'd like you to talk about that quote.
Yeah, that quote sends chills up my spine. I mean, right? I mean, if you can picture yourself forward on that last day on earth, and it's like, there you are, you meet the person you could have become. Don't you want to be that person? I mean, and the only way you're going to be that person is to become that person. And to become that person, you got to do things. You got to start and you got to move forward. You don't want to live a life of regret. And certainly not on the last day. You don't want to be regretting. We only get one shot at this. So, make life all you can make it. And that sounds probably kind of cliche, but really, don't hold back. Try things. Be open-minded. Give things a shot. At least, start thinking about them. It doesn't cost any money to think about something or brainstorm, right? I mean, that's one of my great joys is sitting around brainstorming. It's funny. I was talking to my wife the other day and I said, we could do this or that. It's like, we don't have the money to do that right now. It's like, I know, but it doesn't cost anything to brainstorm, does it? Can't we just have some fun with this and play with our brains and have that? But that's where it starts is, again, in your imagination, and then maybe something comes of that.
And sometimes when it's a money issue, surprisingly, once you delve into it, you find there is either a grant there or there's an opportunity or a way you could go about doing it where the money wouldn't be a blocking issue, let's put it that way, or such an obtrusive issue. It might be still something you get around. And of course, if it's something that's going to make you happy, like a degree or a certificate or training in school or learning a new skill, you're going to get years of enjoyment because you're going to be going to work and doing it, etc.
Yeah. And, there's always going to be something in your way that you have to find your way over, under, around, through, whatever. I mean, that's whether it's in business or personal. There's it could be all the stories that you tell yourself in your own head that are going to get in the way. So recognize that and figure it out. It's problem solving.
You mentioned that people always want to know, what does my future look like? But few want to spend time addressing the question. And of course, we see that a lot under the title of planning here on the show and forward planning. How do you see it, and what's your advice to people who maybe haven't thought 2 months or 2 years ahead?
Well, I think, again, my book is structured as a guide, so you can take it one step at a time. And that really is what it's all about. It's funny, I just came back from a vacation in Europe, and we walked 160 miles from Portugal to Spain. And I realized at the end, you can go a long ways by just putting one foot in front of the other. And so if you don't look at something as a big, giant journey, and you just look at it as step by step, and that's kind of how my book is structured, is take it step by step, you will get there. It's amazing where you can go. I mean, people underestimate what we can do in the long term. They overestimate what we can do in the short term typically, and underestimate what can happen in the long term. So take it baby step by baby step, and you will get somewhere.
Rudy, I love it. I think our audience is going to love the book, Embracing Change. It's by our guest, Rudy Poe, P-O-E. And before we wrap up, Rudy, I'm going to ask you once again, give us that website.
It's rudypoe.com.
Easy enough to remember. Rudy, thanks so much for being with us today. We'd like to remind our audience that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.